This Bournemouth season preview edition of the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks and content available only to our patrons at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Welcome everybody to the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. My name is Malcolm Bamford, coming from Newcastle upon Tyne, up in the northeast of England. And today we carry on our 2023-24 season previews. We're going to talk about Bournemouth today. Joining me from Binghamton is Mr. Barry Penaluna. Hello, Baz. You look intently staring at something. What's going on?
I'm just looking at my notes and seeing what I've got for the night ahead. I'm in a bit of a daze, to be honest, Mark. I'm still ill.
Oh, no. Shit. Super Seeds, get your pens out, write that one down. Barry's still ill.
In a pattern of illness, I'm still dying and potentially more closer to death today.
Oh, well, have you gone down a bit?
I've gone downhill, yeah. Struggling.
I'm just trying to think of anything of yours I might like if you die, but I can't really think of any. It's not like you've got any good golf clubs around.
No, nothing. I've got
nothing.
Nothing.
In all the 30 years of friendship, Baz, and I'm not even going to get a set of golf clubs out of you.
But here I am, ploughing on, regardless.
Ploughing on.
Dedicated to the cause, Malcolm, you know me.
Yeah, so let's remember to tell people today's Wednesday, the 26th of July. So if tomorrow Bournemouth sign, who might Bournemouth sign, Baz?
Erling Haaland.
If Bournemouth sign Erling Haaland tomorrow, and you're listening to this thinking, well, you'd think the lads would mention it, you know what I mean? They've just signed Erling Haaland. Well, we don't know they've signed Erling Haaland because it's the Wednesday, the 26th of July. So that's when we're recording this. So don't be giving us any of that because we're going to publish these near the start of the season in a couple of weeks. Bournemouth, Baz, we've talked before about them. They don't really inspire much of anything in us. We don't like them. We don't dislike them. Well, we do dislike them. We dislike everyone, though, but we don't actively hate them like we do with a lot of teams. And yeah, I mean, if they played well, I can't really remember. Again, we did this when we did the Brentford show, trying to think of any big occasions when Newcastle and Bournemouth had faced off. I do remember getting agitated when Bournemouth beat us because I think we should never lose. I think Steve Cook scored a header up here a couple of years ago, and that agitated. I was like, why are we getting beat off Bournemouth, man, for God's sake? There's about 27 of their fans up in the top deck going mental. And I'm just getting agitated by that just because I'm petty. But yeah, any thoughts on Bournemouth particularly, Baz?
No, not really. They're another one that's fairly inoffensive, and I was quite happy to see them stay up, to be honest. Gary O'Neill was one of the sort of good news stories of the season, really. Although it didn't last for long, as we'll come to in a bit. But yeah, fairly inoffensive Bournemouth. I think me wanting Bournemouth to survive was probably more to do with the fact I would rather have seen the likes of Everton go down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not got a huge amount of bias either way when it comes to Bournemouth.
Fair enough. If we have got any newbie Bournemouth fans listening in, you've obviously found us, but you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. The Premier League Gambling Podcast. We're on Twitter at SGPN Premier and YouTube.com at Premier League Gambling Podcast. Loads of stuff going on. We have weekly picks shows. We'll have weekly previews, reviews, Champions League. We'll do some EFL stuff and some fantasy football as well. So there's always something going on. Always a couple of good picks. We don't do bad. Baz, making new with our picks. A little bit of silliness as well thrown in. So yeah, come and find us. We're going to do a FPL league, which we'll announce later on as well. So stay tuned. We're going to do some FPL stuff. And if you go and find those podcast platforms, you will find that we've done pre-season previews for all 20 teams, as well as our a chance and try and find us. So we get stuck into some of the the pricing, Baz, for Bournemouth. I'll tell you first about our Patreon, the Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon, waging war against the corporate gamblers. Loads of exclusive content, contests, and merch for our patrons. The SGP Stories podcast, which is an ad-free, uncensored show highlighting the best stories from decades of big and DJs. The Discord channel is tremendous, and just generally a great way to keep up to date with everything going on the network. The place to do that is sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Okay. To win the league, Baz, Bournemouth are 1,500 to 1. Juicy price. Top 4 finish is 200 to 1. Top 6 finish, 50 to 1. Relegation is 5 to 2. To stay up, they are 2 to 7, which is around about -350. A top half finish is 6 to 1. A bottom half finish is 1 to 12, -1250. And for them to finish bottom of the league, price is 10 to 1. The handicap price is 16 to 1, and that gives Bournemouth a 48-point head start. Although Bournemouth did amazingly well to stay up, Barry. We did a show in January where I'd worked out all the scores, all the fixtures, and I had them finishing on 17 points. I think at the time they were on 17 points, so I was pretty mean to Bournemouth. But coming out of the World Cup, and I'll run through the little sort of peaks and troughs that they had. Coming out of the World Cup, you didn't know where a point was going to come from. They had 13 points from their first 10 games. Obviously sacked Scott Parker, who went on to do terrible things with Genk or Ghent, whichever one it is. Replaced him with Gary O'Neill. They then lost 8 of 9 around the World Cup break, which really looked like, I mean, it was just nail after nail in the coffin, and that's when I had them down. You couldn't see them where they were going to get another point from. They looked absolutely doomed. And then Gary O'Neill got them going. They made some good signings in January. Towards the back end of the season, Baz, I feel like we picked Bournemouth quite a lot. We had the famous win at Tottenham. We backed them at 7.5, 8 to 1 that day. And there were other occasions. I know you backed them a few times as well.
Wolves, I think, which was right off the back of that terrible run. And I picked them at a point where nobody was picking them and got them at a really good price. So, yeah, we did all right out of Bournemouth last year. A few times we put them up as our underdog and hit them at the right times. Yeah,
they made some under-the-radar decent signings in January and then won 7 of 12, and that's what got themselves safe. So, I mean, 7 wins in 12 is an outstanding record. They hit the beach pretty early, lost the last 4 in a row, but that's not a problem, really. Bournemouth are an interesting team coming into this season for a couple of reasons. And one of the main ones is that they have replaced Gary O'Neill. So he did a great job. They've replaced him with Aldoni Iraola. Now, straight away the next day, I had Terza on the phone saying it's ridiculous that he's earned the right to do the job. I was on totally the other side of that. I think I had no problem with them sacking Gary O'Neill. If the owners think that Gary O'Neill is limited and they think they've found a candidate who can play in a certain way, can impose a style and identity on the club, then just do it. You can't give a bloke a job. It's not you're pushing the trolleys round in Morrison's car park. Well done, Terry. You are great at that. Have the job. If Terry's good at pushing the trolleys round, let Terry push the trolleys round. Just because Gary O'Neill did okay, but this is a different business. I've got no problem with.
I can see why
you disagree or agree.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I can see, it came a bit out of the blue, and it was a bit of a surprise when it happened. But I remember listening to the owner on the radio at one point, sort of explaining the thinking. And I think, he landed the job more as a consequence of them not being able to get who they wanted last season. The feeling was that if they got a bad start this season, he was probably on a sort of short leash anyway. And if they were looking at it thinking, well, if we lose the first 3 or 4 games, we're going to make a move this season, then why not just do it now? And also the fact that Iraola appeared to have been someone they've wanted for a while. They couldn't get him before because he wouldn't leave Rayo Vallecano in the middle of a season. And he became available. And by all accounts, he was a man they wanted to sort of take them to that next level. So yeah, having listened to the owner sort of explain the thinking behind it, I think it's not a bad move. Whether it produces what they hope it'll produce is another matter. But yeah, I don't mind the decision to dispense of Gary O'Neill. He done outstanding, as you say. But if they don't feel he's the right man for the job, to do what you want next season, then you move on, don't you? If you think you've got a better man available, then so be it.
Yeah, it's a brave decision. But what you can't do is just sleepwalk into 1 point from your first 6 games and then have to sack Gary O'Neill and go chasing around for somebody else. So, yeah, it's a brave call. I've got no problem with it. He came in from Rio Vallecano, who finished 11th in La Liga last year. Now, Vallecano aren't a big club, 11th place finish. It's a good finish. I actually saw Vallecano live last season. And can remember nothing about it, but I can't tell if they're any good or not. Well, I can't tell. They weren't very good, but I can't pick out any sort of players or any patterns. I just can't really remember that game.
The big thing with Iraola, isn't it? He's said to favour a very attacking style, very high pressing. He played under Bielsa at Bilbao, and he's said to adopt a very similar approach. I think for me,
chaos is the word I've heard being level, like planned chaos. Like he wants the chaos. Yeah. He encourages the chaos. And I've heard that from players that he's played under and with.
It's going to be like Ted Lasso. Chaos.
Absolute chaos. I'm all for a bit of chaos.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it just remains to be seen if Bournemouth have the tools at the disposal to make that work. But then, as I say, I don't know a huge amount about Rio Vallecano, but he's overachieved with them, given their budget and the size of that club. It was a good season for them. So yeah, let's see what he can do with Bournemouth.
In terms of signings, having a look, they picked up Milos Kerkez, who is a left back, 19-year-old Serb, which is someone from Serbia, not someone who plays on the bench. If you're from Ashington, Baz, don't ruin me Ashington joke. Is he not from where?
I'm sure he's from Hungary.
19-year-old Serb.
I'm fairly sure.
To be fair, I thought he was Hungarian and all, but I do have the word Serb written down, and I don't know why. I didn't write Serb down just to do the Ashington joke. I know that. Yeah, did he not play for a Hungarian team? We're going to have to Google it now.
Hungary, I'm certain.
Have we got time to Google it?
No, I've just Googled it. I already have it written down, and the confidence of my.
That's a bad start, Baz, isn't it? That's all the Bournemouth fans switching off.
He's got 8 caps for Hungary.
He's fucking Serbian.
No, I'm not having that.
Born in Serbia, he represents the Hungary national team.
Yep, so he's Hungarian.
He was born in Serbia. He's Serbian. So, 19-year-old Hungar-Serbian Milos Kerkez, left back. I've heard lots of nice things about him, highly rated. And I think he'll get a start. I think he's going to play. And the other one's Kluivert's kid. What's his first name?
Justin Kluivert. He came in for about 10 million from Roma, hasn't he?
I'm not really
sure what to make of Kluivert. He's came from Roma, although he's spent the last 3 years out on loan from Roma. He's been to Leipzig, Nice, and Valencia. And obviously he hasn't done enough to justify a permanent move to any of those. And finds himself here for a fairly modest fee. Plays mostly as a left winger, but he can play over on the right as well. So yeah, remains to be seen whether he can set the world on fire. Son of Patrick Kluivert, as you say, but sort of looking at the record, doesn't seem he's hit the same sort of heights so far.
I think he's very hit and miss, Baz. I mean, you throw in he's a winger, and their form is notoriously flaky. He's young, also notoriously flaky, and everything else he does is notoriously flaky. He'll have one good game in 6 kind of thing, He'll probably have two show real goals back to show for the end of the season, but I'm not sure he's going to move the needle for Bournemouth too much. They have got some players that do like the keeper's decent in there too. I thought Senesi had a good season,
haven't they? They've also brought in Hamed Traore, an attacking midfielder from Sassuolo. He's the sort of biggest signing so far, around a 20 million fee for him, which looks like it could be a good addition as well.
Yeah, I mean, the two games I saw Bournemouth against Newcastle last year, Bournemouth played really well. They got a 1-1 draw up here. And then there was a 0-0 down at Bournemouth, where Bournemouth were much the better team. And Newcastle were in a bit of a funk. That was kind of that February, March time when Newcastle really had the worst dip of the season. But Bournemouth outplayed us and saved a couple of missed chances and a goal line clearance. Bournemouth should have won that game. But so I think they're going to be good at home. Like I say, I like Senesi. Really like Billing as a player. I think he's excellent. Lewis Cook was at that wedding that I worked at, Baz. Adam Armstrong's wedding. Lewis Cook was there. Do you remember? Right, I'll quiz question you up here. Adam Armstrong's wedding. Lewis Cook, the third footballer who was at that wedding, scored against Manchester United last night. There you go. This is good. This is off the cuff trivia. This, Baz.
Interesting. I don't even know who Man United played last night, Morgan.
You see, you're a jerk. The answer, well, if they played Wrexham, Baz.
Yeah. What was it?
Still nothing? Here's the right answer. Well done, Barry. Everyone was kicking off about that because people had paid about a gazillion quid for tickets to watch Man U v Wrexham when the fixture was announced.
And
then 2 months later, they then announced the fixture against Real Madrid and sent like the under-8s to play Wrexham last night. So there was all these silly, was it in America? All these Americans with tickets that spent loads of dollars on and ended up watching Man United under-8s get beat 3-1 and have a man sent off. Utara Dango's a good player. And I really, really like Solanke, Baz. Solanke, I think he got a bit of a bad press because he was at Liverpool, never really worked for him. And people, he was often the sort of butt of quite a lot of jokes. You'd see sort of Twitter memes and stuff. Whenever there was someone had wasted some money, like you'd see Solanke catching strays. Be like, well, you paid this much for Solanke, and then last year he did really, really well. He's a very good player. I don't see why that's going to change this year. Generally speaking, though, Baz, I'm worried about them. It's a lack of depth, and it's the question marks over the manager. So it's can Iraola impose himself and that style of play? That's the question mark. We don't know that. But it's a hard league to be able to do it in. We've seen managers come and go who failed. We've seen teams do the same, and it's a very competitive league. So I must admit, I am not convinced. This is pretty much the same line that I trotted out in January, though, Baz, and couldn't have been more wrong. So, do you have what's your general prognosis?
I'm heading in the same direction as you, I think. I mean, he can come with all the attacking style he wants and all the chaos he wants, but the problem he's got to solve is their defensive frailties. They conceded 71 goals last year. You know, you're getting on for almost 2 a game. And with that sort of record, you're going to struggle. There was only 2 teams in the league conceded less goals than that, conceded more than that. And only 2 teams in the league lost more games than them. So you think, if you're the 3rd worst team in terms of goal conceded and 3rd worst team in terms of games lost, you're probably quite fortunate to find yourself out of the bottom 3. So they need to improve on that front. But yeah, in terms of a pick, I think I was a bit torn on this one, but in my league prediction that I have got Bournemouth to go down. I have to say it's based on what I saw last season and the feeling that although they stayed up fairly comfortable in the end, I think it was 5 points. For large parts of the season, they were distinctly average or even bordering on very poor. They had that stint in March to April where they won 6 and 9, which turned the season around. Either side of that, as you said earlier, it wasn't pretty at all. But the conflict does come around the uncertainty of how Iraola will change things. And if he's able to impose himself, as you say, he is highly regarded. They made a big move to bring him in, as you say, a bold decision. And he might bring a more entertaining brand of football with more attacking intent. But where are the goals coming from? Nobody scored. I think the top scorer last year was Solanke, and Billing got 7 each. And as I say, what's he going to do defensively? Because they definitely need to improve on that front. So I looked at 2 things. I think you caveat this with the fact you're making this pick on the 26th of July. And there probably will be more business done. You've talked about the strength and depth and things like that. I expect there will be more business done over the next couple of weeks. But as it stands, I've got Bournemouth going down. And that pick would come in at 2-1. So plus 200. And another one that I've considered to be a safer play is where we've looked at a lot of these and sort of looked for them to finish above someone or finish below someone. And a good match I found where I could get a roundabout even money was for Forest to finish above Bournemouth. I think Forest will go okay this year. And Forest to finish above Bournemouth at 10 to 11, so minus 110. Was a pick I liked also here.
Forest to finish above Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was looking for some patterns and stuff, Baz, and I did see a lot of red flags. Like it's there was no real patterns in the home and away from. They won 6-2, they won 5 away. They did lose 8 away games by over 1.5 goals, so that could be an angle in. 17th in goals scored, 19th in goals conceded, so neither of those are great. Didn't draw many games. Don't be back in the draw. They drew 6 games all season. And then 4 1-0 wins at the end of the season just were a little bit of a red flag for me as well, because that was out of character and, again, not really sustainable. I've got them finishing 18th, Baz. So I've got them going down as well. So my 2 picks were Bournemouth to get relegated. It's a price of 5-2 plus 250. But I have found a positive one. It's not all doom and gloom. I've got a winner for you, Bournemouth supporters. I've got them to finish 18. So there's only 2 teams that can finish above, but they can finish above Everton at even money. So that's going to be me. That's me positive Bournemouth pick. Even money plus 100. Bournemouth to finish above Everton. We'll have a little look at some fantasy possibilities, Baz, once I've told you about Underdog Fantasy, one of our fun sponsors here on the Premier League Gambling Podcast. The NFL season is right around the corner. Underdog Pick'em is a great way to get down on a ton of NFL player props and is available in a ton of markets. There's loads of opportunities to win in their daily MLB contests, and of course, make sure to end the Best Ball Mania 4, where first place gets $1 million. Head to underdogfantasy.com, use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN. Okay, any fantasy players? We're having a listener league this year. We've only got a couple of rules. You have to be in by the start of the season and try and do us something nice by going to wherever you found us and hitting the like button, leave us a review, leave us 5 stars, thumbs up, subscribe, all of those things. Do us a favour, means we can crack on. We're going to have 150 quid in cash up for grabs here. We've got some merch from the SGPN merch store, and we've got the egg in a cup. The code you need is CVVQAB. That is Cactus Violin question Arthur bread bin. For those bread bin, Baz. Whoa. When was the last time you heard anyone say bread bin?
It's been a while.
Been a while? The 2000s, do you reckon? Earlier?
Yeah, at least.
Has your mother got a bread bin?
I reckon my gran had a bread bin. My mother doesn't.
My mother's got a bread bin, like. There's occasionally like a bit of cake in the bread bin if you're like once every 3 or 4 months. Oh, it is. We might bring it back. I've got no issue with the bread bin. I was just stuffed in the pantry there. Like, and it's got no place. If you have the butter dish in there, that's a nice touch. Like, because have you butter out? Do you have a butter dish?
No dish.
No butter dish.
It comes in a tub. Why do you need it in a dish?
Well, because it's butter. It's rock hard.
Right. Okay.
But if you keep the butter in if the butter dish is in with the bread in the bread bin, lovely touch that, Baz. That's classy, that. What are we talking about? Fantasy football, yeah. So, CVVQAB, going into that for a start. And then, Baz, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't think there will be very many, if any, Bournemouth players in my fantasy team when we pick it. But there are a couple of options. And really, the players that I mentioned that I sort of liked at the start. Utara had a really good second half. I like Solanke. Solanke's going to start every week, number 9. And a big part of fantasy football is opportunity. You talk about Manchester City players and the pep rotation and stuff. I don't think you're going to get that with Solanke. He's going to be there absolutely every single week. I like Philip Billing as well. I don't think he'd be playing goalies and defenders. because there's not going to be many clean sheets around. We already know it's going to be chaos. The manager's told us that. The Utara's a decent price at 5 million. He scored 49 points in the second half of the season. So if you extrapolate that, 98 points is reasonable for a 5 million player. But yeah, Solanke, Billing, have you got any gems for us, Baz?
No, not really. I mean, Solanke and Billing were the only two that got over the 100 mark last year. Solanke scored 130. Billing scored 126. I mean, Solanke will obviously continue to be the focal point of the attack. Obviously, it remains to be seen if Bournemouth will become a more potent force. But Solanke at 6.5 million, not for me, I don't think, at this stage. Billing, certainly the best of the midfielders for Bournemouth at 5.5. But like I said yesterday when we were talking about Everton, I think there's better options in that price bracket. Might be worth watching Hamad Traore, new right winger they've signed. He's at 5 million. If he gets off to a good start, he might be a good cheap bench option. Beyond that, like you, I couldn't be convinced by many in Bournemouth in terms of a fantasy league stance. Certainly not in the defence. I'm a bit concerned about that. Neto, the keeper, had an all right season. He scored 93 last year, and he is in the 4.5 million bracket, which makes him a potential option for a second keeper. I mean, many people will have sort of goalkeeper rotations where you might pick up two keepers in the 4.5 million bracket and rotate them around the fixtures. But again, I think most people will probably find a better option than Neto at Bournemouth, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Baz. And I think that's just about it done and dusted, Baz. Have you got anything else you wanted to tell us about?
Nothing Bournemouth related, Malcolm. That is it from me.
Nothing Bournemouth related, yeah. Interesting season. Certainly one of the more interesting teams to handicap, just because of the question marks over mainly the manager and how they're going to go. I think Bournemouth fans will be full of hope because Iraola is going to give them a chance. So if it goes to plan, they're going to score some goals. They'll be good to watch, and they're going to give themselves a chance. So the ceiling for Bournemouth and their supporters is great. So yeah, good luck if you are a Bournemouth fan. Like I say, just stay in touch with us all through the season. Check in. We'll make our picks. We'll be doing EFL stuff and everything else you need to know, as well as weekly fantasy football updates on our league. So yeah, appreciate anyone who joined in and listened. Give us a follow in all the places that I mentioned earlier on. The rest of the team previews will be around as well. Go and give those a listen. We've got some decent picks. Until the next time, we will see you down the road. Cheers.